For years, the digital underground was governed by a singular, looming force. They were known as LockBit, an entity that functioned not just as a criminal gang, but as the world's most sophisticated and efficient ransomware conglomerate. They operated with the arrogance of a global titan, flaunting their success, recruiting affiliates with polished marketing materials, and treating the cybersecurity industry as a secondary concern. For the victims, hospitals struggling to access patient records, schools locked out of their grading systems, and massive corporations watching their proprietary data leak onto the dark web, LockBit was a persistent, unkillable nightmare. They seemed to exist behind an impregnable wall of encryption and anonymity, convinced that they were the masters of their own domain. But in the quiet, sterile offices of global law enforcement agencies, a different reality was taking shape. The hunters were no longer content to merely chase the prey, they were preparing to occupy the forest. What followed was Operation Cronos, a masterclass in modern digital warfare that didn't just disrupt a criminal enterprise, but systematically dismantled the myth of its invincibility. To understand why Operation Cronos was so unprecedented, one must first appreciate the scale of the adversary. LockBit was the pioneer of the Ransomware-as-a-Service model, a business strategy that allowed them to outsource the dirty work of hacking to thousands of independent affiliates. They provided the software, the infrastructure, and the extortion platform, while their foot soldiers provided the targets. This made them a hydra. Every time a specific attack was thwarted, a dozen more were already in progress. The security community had spent years playing the role of the goalkeeper, desperately trying to block shots as they came in. But the FBI, in coordination with the UK's National Crime Agency and an international coalition of 10 countries, realized that defense was a losing battle. To defeat LockBit, they had to stop reacting to the attacks and start owning the ecosystem itself. They didn't just want to take down the group's website, they wanted to colonize their infrastructure. The infiltration phase of Operation Cronos remains one of the most remarkable feats of digital espionage in history. Law enforcement didn't burst through the digital gates, they slipped through the shadows, mirroring the very tactics the hackers themselves used. Investigators spent months meticulously mapping the internal network, not just of the malware, but of the human operators behind it. They gained administrative access to the group's back-end systems, effectively becoming ghosts in the machine. They watched as affiliates logged in, as developers updated the encryption code, and as negotiators engaged with desperate victims. They didn't tip their hand. They sat quietly, collecting the intelligence that would eventually render the entire gang obsolete. They were building a complete forensic mirror of the enemy's home turf, waiting for the perfect moment to execute a strike that would be felt across the entire criminal underworld. That moment arrived on February 19, 2024. For the members of LockBit, it was meant to be another standard Monday of extortion and data theft. But as they attempted to access their administrative dashboards, they were met with a reality that shattered their sense of security. The servers were gone. The interface had been replaced. The law enforcement agencies had effectively seized the crown jewels of the LockBit operation. In a stroke of psychological genius, the coalition did not simply turn the lights off, they hijacked the theater. They took control of the group's public-facing leak site, the very platform the hackers used to bully victims, and repurposed it into a stage for their own narrative. The splash page that greeted the hackers and the public was a masterpiece of digital humiliation. It wasn't just a notice of seizure, it was a taunt. The agencies published a countdown timer, mockingly mimicking the group's own extortion tactics. Every day, they released fresh, embarrassing intelligence, the identities of affiliates, internal logs, and proof of just how deep the law enforcement infiltration had gone. They turned the group's most powerful weapon, the threat of exposure, against the criminals themselves. For the hackers who had spent years hiding behind aliases and encrypted tunnels, the sudden exposure of their digital footprint was a catastrophic blow. The message was unmistakable: you are not anonymous, you are not secure, and we are watching you. Beyond the theater of the operation, the technical impact was devastating. The coalition seized 34 servers and over 11,000 domains associated with the group. More importantly, they recovered over 1,000 decryption keys. In the world of ransomware, a decryption key is the holy grail. It is the difference between a company losing its entire history and a company recovering its operations. By liberating these keys, the law enforcement agencies essentially handed hundreds of victims their lives back. It was a tangible, immediate victory that resonated far beyond the technical community, proving that the abstract concept of cyber policing could yield concrete, life-altering results. The fallout within the dark web community was instantaneous. LockBit's brand, which relied entirely on the perception of being the most professional and reliable service in the business, was destroyed in a matter of hours. Their affiliates, who trusted the platform to protect their anonymity and facilitate their profits, were suddenly confronted with the realization that their safe home had been a surveillance hub for the FBI all along. Trust is the only currency in the underground, and once that trust is evaporated, it cannot be bought back. The king of ransomware, known by the alias LockBit Sup, went into a frantic, public spiral, desperately trying to maintain his reputation while his organization crumbled around him. Operation Cronos signaled a permanent shift in the philosophy of cyber policing. It marked the transition from a passive, defensive posture to an active, offensive one. It demonstrated that even the most hardened criminal infrastructure has an Achilles heel, the human element.